Hello and welcome to another video on the Life After Brady channel. Today we're going to take a look at the AFC South in terms of what they will bring in 2020, what is possible. We're looking at a division where the Houston Texans have won the division 4 out of the last 5 years. The Tennessee Titans were obviously the surprise team last year, beating both the Ravens and the Patriots in the playoffs. The Colts, after Andrew Luck's shocking retirement last year, struggled, but have a very solid team behind Frank Reich and company. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are most likely rebuilding in 2020. The Houston Texans beat the Buffalo Bills after winning the division last year and finishing with a 10-6 record. Beat the Buffalo Bills wildcard weekend and then lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead, being up big. And then Patrick Mahomes and company came back to beat them. They were 14th in points and then 19th in points against. 2020 is shockingly Bill O'Brien's 7th year as the head coach of the Houston Texans. He is also the general manager, as we all know. 2018 was his best year, where he finished 11-5, which makes sense. This isn't a team that's going 12-4, 13-3, like you think of with the the Patriots of the past, or the Chiefs, the Ravens, excuse me. This is a 9-7 to 11-5 team. Typically, 5 out of the 6 years they've finished with 9 or more wins. So they're not losing games, but they're also not the cream of the crop. Deshaun Watson will be entering his 4th year in the league, 3rd year as a full-time starter. And he's been very good. We'll get into this in a second, but above a 66 career completion percentage, 71 to 29 in terms of touchdown interception ratio, and a QB rating above 101. He's been very, very good. The questions to me are the pieces surrounding him, especially this is the end of his rookie deal, the end of the cheapness of his rookie deal. He'll obviously play on that 5th-year extension, 5th-year option, next year, and then be getting a pretty lucrative extension, whether it's with the Texans or possibly somewhere else. So obviously I think it will be with the Texans. To me, the questions are the defense. Whitney Mercilus is 30 years old, J.J. Watt 31, coming off of an injury. I know he returned last year in limited capacity in the playoff game, but they know they need to replace him. They drafted a defensive tackle in the 2nd round and a defensive end in the 3rd round. On the offensive side of the ball, I have a whole lot of questions. They lose DeAndre Hopkins, which we'll get into in a second. So can this offense be reliable in 2020? DeAndre Hopkins is one of the most reliable receivers in the league. The stat was pretty crazy. I think 2 or 3 years ago he didn't drop a ball or something like that. Now you have guys like Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, David Johnson, who have premier talent, but are they reliable to stay on the field? I have here 2 games, 5 games, 3 games, 3 games missed for the 4 of them. So I see a lot of, well, this team's never going to be at full strength in 2020. We're going to be a what if, could they do this? I think it's going to be a lot of good on paper, but fail to execute on the field. And then to me, replacing Hopkins, Stills and Fuller were catching the ball at 9 yards. Hopkins at a 7.5. It's not significant, but 2 or 3 yards does make a world of difference. So I think Watson's completion percentage goes down this year. I think it's just going to be harder to fit it into those windows, and especially those guys now. I know Cooks comes over, so you're going to have a deep threat, as you already did with Will Fuller. So I just think they're not going to be as open as they were. You had 1 to 2 guys always on Hopkins, and usually their best guy on the opposing defense, and now that's not going to be the case. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'll just highlight Vernon Hargreaves. Can he step up at nickel corner? Came over from Tampa last year, former 1st-round pick. Per Pro Football Reference, 23 for 33 when players attacked him last year, 270 yards and 3 touchdowns, 124.6 QB rating. It's just one of those things. He's going to need to step up as well as the rest of the defense. I think one thing that is, though, clear, and I think we learned this last year, and I'm glad that we realized it, Deshaun Watson is a premier quarterback. He's right in that, Mike Sando's piece has him as a tier 1 quarterback. He's right with these 5 guys, Lamar, Patrick, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson. He's absolutely right there with them by any stretch of it. Possibly he's the bottom of that window, but he's right there with them. He's the highest completion percentage last year of those guys. He tied Lamar in terms of rushing touchdowns. He did have the most interceptions, which is one thing I'm a little concerned about with Hopkins. He's going to have to force the balls a little bit more. The windows are going to be a little tighter. I think that could be slightly problematic. But this guy is a premier talent and absolutely one of the top quarterbacks we have in this league, and will be a key piece of the Houston Texans in 2020. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, there's no reason to think 2020 won't be a step in a better direction than it was in 2019 for them. The Colts missed the playoffs in 2019, finished with a 7-9 record, which is pretty amazing considering where they were. Andrew Luck retires during the last preseason game. They have no time to adjust. They have Brian Hoyer and Jacoby Brissett, who are good people. They're okay quarterbacks, but they're not Andrew Luck, and it's not like you had all year to prepare for them. You're preparing to play with the top quarterback, and then you're just not. So it's just was impossible to be successful last year. But with Phillip Rivers this year, they should be in a much better position. This is Frank Reich's third season, 10-6 the previous year, and then 7-9 last year. I expect him to get back into that Bill O'Brien territory, 9-7, 10-6 type thing. And just highlighting how bad Hoyer and Brissett were. Below a 60% completion percentage, 207 yards a game, nearly 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and then 32 sacks. They were forced to run the ball, which with that offensive line makes a lot of sense, but you also need a good rush or passing attack to go with it, and they didn't have it. On the defensive side of the ball, better against the rush than the pass. And then T.Y. Hilton did miss 6 games. Zach Pascal led the team in receiving with 607 yards, which is pretty frightening. And that's, to me, what scares me about Phillip Rivers. He played last year with Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, obviously. And I just don't think this Colts team has that talent. They've done a great job building up front. The trade with the Niners on the defensive line side of the ball, Quentin Nelson. This team was built to protect Andrew Luck. I think Phillip will be protected. I'm just concerned the weapons aren't there, especially guys like Eric Ebron have left town. I just don't think it's there for the Colts in 2020 in terms of weapons. As I say that, though, they did go out and draft weapons. Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor both drafted in the second round to try and help Phillip Rivers. So we'll see what they can do to help him with no preseason games for them to get adjusted. We'll see what they can do in the regular season. Taking a look here at Hilton and Phillip Rivers. Hilton is a 31-year-old wide receiver out of FAU. Obviously a premier talent. I just get concerned of, was last year where it just starts to go downhill, or was last year just, a little downtrodden and he'll be able to bounce back a little bit. I think that 1,400-yard season's behind him, but can he get to 960 again, 1,000 yards? We'll see. We'll see if the injuries are able to hold up. Obviously, he's a premier talent, but at 31, you're not getting the same guy you were getting at 27. And then Phillip Rivers, he's a very good quarterback, 39 years old. I just get concerned. He's his best days are obviously behind him, and Tom Brady has kind of given us a false sense of these quarterbacks can play into their 40s, in my opinion. I think you saw it with Drew Brees a little bit, just giving up on the deep ball, and I wonder Phillip Rivers too. These guys are old, and they're old for a reason, and I just don't know whether they can be as successful or nearly as successful as they were in their mid-30s as they reach near 40. Next, take a look at the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, the surprise of the 2019 playoffs. They were a wildcard team, finished with a 9-7 record, went into Foxborough, demolished the Patriots, went to Baltimore, beat the Ravens, and then went to Kansas City and played a competitive game. Did lose by double figures, but it was a competitive game. Obviously, Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill both back, which is very good. Concerns for me, Logan Ryan and Jarrell Casey both gone. Those are two guys that are top-end players that they're going to have a hard time replacing, in my opinion. They were 10th in points for, 12th in points against. Mike Vrabel, this is his third season, was 9-7 the previous 2 years. They ran the ball successfully last year. Once they switched over to Derrick Henry full go, they were 10th in attempts for the season, 3rd in yards. Passing, they were 31st in attempts, showing just that, lack of balance, I'll say. But they were successful when they did throw it, 21st in yards and 8th in touchdowns. So obviously, they didn't throw it a ton, but when they did, they got in the end zone, which doesn't matter if you throw it 100 times or 5, but if you all score the same amount of touchdowns, then that's all that matters. The offense was 6th in DVOA, which was pretty surprising to me. That's above teams like the 49ers. Defense was 16th, and special teams was 29th. As we know, they stopped kicking after week 10 or so last year, which is pretty crazy. I expect that to change this year, but you got to think things like that might bite into them more, and then, as I said, losing Logan Ryan and Jarrell Casey. Maybe Clowney comes in for them. He's still unsigned. Maybe another guy like that. It's possible. We'll see. And then A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown had a fantastic year. 1,000 receiving yards. Looked like the premier talent of the draft, of a lot of good guys that were drafted last year. We'll see, though, if he can repeat his sophomore season. Tannehill had a great year. I think a couple of things that surprised me is just the touchdown percentage. He ended last year with a touchdown percentage of 7.7, which, he had 6.2 the year before in Miami, so it's not a crazy jump. But Patrick Mahomes last year had a 5.4. He was 8.6 the year before that, and Lamar was 9%, which is obviously a crazy number. But 7.7% just tells me, a lot of times he scored touchdowns, it's wonderful. You picture him, a lot of play action, deep balls, he connected on for 6, but I just don't know how repeatable that is for a quarterback like Tannehill. I think a couple of those, get deflected, receiver falls down, the timing isn't perfect. I just don't see how repeatable it is in this offense. And then Derrick Henry ran the ball over 300 times in 2019 for the first time in his career. Previous high was 215. Other players have done it. Adrian Peterson, Ezekiel Elliott, I think Todd Gurley did it. So it's repeatable, but obviously a little harder on running backs to repeat the successful seasons that Henry had. And then one last thing on the Tennessee Titans, just a surprise to me. Ryan Tannehill was more successful in play action than Lamar Jackson last season. Now, I get it. Part of it, Lamar's threat is his ability to run. So if he's play action to the running back, you're more keen on him running the ball. But just a pretty crazy amount. And then you look at just where they are. So Tannehill is the red line here. Basically, so this is 10 yards. So, 10 yards and above, he had a 90% completion percentage last year. The league is, 78%. Jackson was 85 or so. I just think this falls back to the regression to the mean a little bit. There's no way he can stay that crazy of a high percentage on throws that long. And then, that 15 yards, that's a first down right there. And he's doing it 80% of the time. That's a pretty crazy amount. So I just don't know how repeatable that is. But we'll see. Certainly could be, and would be another great year for the Titans if so. We move on to the final team, and the team that will be the weakest in the division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, 6-10. In 2019, they were 26th in points for, 21st in points against. This is the fourth season of Doug Marrone, and probably the last. After a 10-6 season, his first season, he's been 5-11 and 6-10 the previous two. The defense has been bad, the defense was bad, good, and then bad again. And the offense, mediocre, bad, great, and then terrible the last 2 years. So this is a bad team. There's no other way to put it. The Nick Foles experiment failed. They're going to go with the 6th round quarterback who was good. He's good because he won 6 games. I don't know how repeatable some of that is. We shall see. And then Leonard Fournette. The situation's been ugly. Obviously, a lot of it was related to Tom Coughlin. He was very good in 2019. If he can be that type of player again, be able to rush for over 1,000 yards and receive for 500, I think they'll help stabilize the team. I think it is key to have, running backs may not be the most important thing in the world anymore, but I think for bad teams, if they can have a stable running back, that does allow them to move the ball, and especially if he's a dual threat, if he's a guy that can run for it and receive it. So I do like that, and I think Ngakoue is probably gone at some point, but they're going to wait for the best offer, and we'll see where that comes. All of that being said, let's take a look at the overall division. Texans have won the division 4 out of the last 5 years. This division has produced a wild card the last 3 years, including the Titans. That obviously probably will happen again with the NFL expanding their playoffs this year. They will play the AFC North and the NFC North for their crossover matchups. I like the top 3 teams in this division, and I think they're all going to compete with each other. I think they're all 8-8 to 10-6 caliber of teams. I don't see any of them being superb, but it should be a fun year for them to compete for a playoff spot either through the division or the wild card this year. If you enjoyed the video, please like or subscribe, and have a good one.